What is up, Beam Team? It is your boy, King Beam. I'm back with another review. I watched Backrooms. I went into it not really knowing anything about what it was about, and I was thoroughly impressed with the film. I loved it. I honestly give it a 9.5 out of 10, but I saw that a lot of people thought it was like bad. Not bad, but they didn't think it was like good. I mean, a lot of people did think it was bad as well, and I feel like me personally, when I see somebody that doesn't agree with my opinion, I'm like, oh, that opinion is dumb, and I think that that's a bad way to go about it. And I just want to provide a more genuine insight onto the film, because the people who don't like Backrooms, I do think that they have a point. In the beginning, definitely the film is kind of slow. The first act spends a lot of time building up to the plot and doing these therapy sessions, and you might not, you don't really know what you're building towards, so you don't feel like it's the most interesting, and the horror elements take a bit of a long time to arrive, and a lot of things feel kind of unexplained, and the ending is ambiguous in a way that can feel less like a deliberate artistic decision and more like a shrug. I think that is a valid criticism of the film if you look at it that way, and if you walked in expecting a traditional horror film, you probably walked out frustrated, because that's not what this film is. It doesn't give you exactly what you came for in the way you expected to receive it. And I think for a lot of people, especially people who've been following Backrooms as an internet phenomenon for years, there was a version of this movie they imagined in their head that simply didn't exist. And the movie they imagined was pure survival horror, pure dread, pure creature feature with yellow wallpaper vibes. And instead, Kane gave them a character study, a slow burn psychological drama that happens to be set in one of the most terrifying fictional spaces ever invented. And I understand the whiplash. So if you walked out of this film feeling let down, I see you. I'm not here to tell you your feelings were wrong. I'm here to show you something you might have missed that could change the whole way you view this film. And now, when I saw the film, I was enjoying it, even though it was kind of slow. But there's this moment that made me lock in. There's this scene of found footage, right? If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'm not going to spoil what happens in said scene, but there's a scene of found footage. And honestly, it's one of the most hypnotic things I've ever watched in a horror film, because it's so immersive. The way it's shot and the way that you hear sounds all around you in the theater, it's just so immersive. And the thing about this found footage and what it's doing, and this is what I want to really drill into your minds for this whole review, is that it's making the Backrooms feel like a memory and not a place you're visiting, a place you're remembering. There's a difference, and I feel like it matters so much for the rest about what I'm about to tell you, right? And the sequence itself is just simply, I feel like, the best scene in the film by far. One of my favorite horror scenes that I've ever seen in a horror film. And it speaks to the fact that the Backrooms in this film is not a place, it's not a dimension, it's not a parallel universe, it's not just a liminal space horror concept. The Backrooms in this film is a machine that runs on memory, specifically on the memories we want to bury, the memories we shove down so far that we've convinced ourselves they don't exist anymore. The facility, which is what the movie calls the larger organism behind the Backrooms, it doesn't just trap people, it reads them. It reaches into the part of your brain where you keep all the stuff you don't want to talk about and builds a world out of it. And now I know that's a big claim, so let me walk you through it, because I didn't get here alone. I want to shout out Reddit user plenty_beautiful_742, who posted one of the most detailed and rigorous breakdowns of this film that I've seen anywhere online, and their analysis of the film and how the facility builds from memory genuinely helped me crystallize what I was already trying to say, but I didn't know how to fully say it, but they really helped me, right? So the rooms themselves, the endless identical hallways, the humming carpet, the fluorescent lights, these rooms are not random. They're built from the unconscious spatial memories of whoever enters, right? The facility learns the architecture of your mind and mirrors it back to you. That's why the Backrooms feel so familiar, even though you've never been there. It feels like a dream of a place you once knew, because it is. It's made out of the residue of forgotten spaces, places from your past that you don't consciously access anymore, but that your brain still holds. And then there are these still lives, right? These human-shaped figures that appear in the second half of the film, the ones that sit at the dinner table. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about, right? The ones that are wandering these walls, and the ones that seem almost human but are wrong in ways you can't quite articulate. And here's what I think they are. They are the people you remember imperfectly. They are reconstructions. The facility, because it has access to your memory, starts building versions of the people from your life using only the information your mind retained. And here's the key insight. How convincing a still life is depends entirely on how well you actually knew that person and how honestly you remember them. And that includes remembering who you are. Now, I need you to think about the dinner scene if you've seen the film, right? The main character, Clark, he's sitting at this table and there's a bunch of still lives in the room. Well, there's like, what, 2 or 3, I think, but you know, there's still lives in the room, and they range from like kind of convincing to extremely deeply wrong. And once you understand the memory theory, each one of them tells you something specific about Clark as a person. There's a bearded man at the table who might be the electrician from earlier in the film, maybe not, but he could be. But the electrician earlier in the film didn't have a beard, so he probably isn't that guy. But you know, he's there. All right, he's very weird. The way a description of a face is weird, but when you read it instead of see it, and that's because Clark barely knew this person, right? He was a brief interaction, a peripheral memory. The facility had almost nothing to work with, so the result is rough, broken down approximation of a man. Then there's the wheelchair guy, and this guy I find really fascinating. He never appears anywhere else in the film. He has no obvious connection to anything, and the theory I find most compelling is that he might be someone Clark saw once, not someone Clark knew. Someone Clark saw on a bus, maybe in a waiting room, in a commercial. The facility doesn't just have access to your close relationships, it has access to all of it, every face you ever registered, even the ones you didn't know you were registering at the time. And the wheelchair guy is evidence that the facility goes deeper than conscious memory, in that it will use whatever it finds. And then there's this red-haired woman, and she moves more naturally. She holds herself differently. She feels more real than the others, even though she still feels really weird. And I believe that's because she's Clark's ex-wife, or a version of her built from years and years of memory and repressed memories and angry memories, all of it combined. The facility had so much to work with here, you know, shared meals, shared arguments, shared silences. Every time Clark looked at her face, the facility was making notes, but she doesn't speak, not once. She just sits there and watches. And earlier in the film, Mary, who's the therapist, they do a role play in this therapy session, and she's, you know, the ex-wife, and they do this whole role play thing. And every time she does this, Clark talks and accuses and explains and justifies everything that happened in the relationship, and you know, why they had to get a divorce and all that. And the wife in those sessions never really talks back. She never gets to respond, because Clark spent years of their marriage not actually listening to her. He wasn't interested in her side. He had already decided what her side was. So the version of her that the facility built from Clark's memory is silent, because in Clark's memory, she was always silent. He made her that way. That's not ambient horror, that's character work. That's the film using a monster to tell you who Clark really is. Boom, it's beautiful. Here's the thing that made me feel like this film is a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's really good. Captain Clark, the still life that does look like a monster but looks less like a monster than everyone else, but still looks like I don't know how to describe it. Like he's more complete than the other still lives, but also he looks disgusting. So why does he look like this? Why does he feel almost superior to the real Clark in a way that's deeply unsettling? And it's because Captain Clark is not built from Clark's memory of someone else. He built it from Clark's memory of himself. Captain Clark is Clark's self-image made flesh, the version of himself that Clark has been protecting his whole life, the version who was never wrong, never at fault, always right, always the most important person in the room, the version who would have had a great marriage if only his wife had tried harder, the version whose career failed because the world didn't recognize his talent, not because of anything he did. This is the Clark that Clark has been feeding and maintaining and protecting behind a wall of blame and denial for years and years. And so when the facility finally builds him, it builds him with confidence, it builds him with authority, it builds him with all the qualities the real Clark has only in his own head. And Captain Clark is what Clark sees when he closes his eyes and thinks about who he really is. And for a long time, Clark and Captain Clark get along perfectly. Of course they do. They want the same thing. The Backrooms is a place where Clark's delusions work. Nobody challenges him. Nobody holds him accountable. He gets to just exist in a world that has decided that he matters. And then when the dinner scene happens and Mary, who's been doing therapy work on Clark this whole time, finally says the thing out loud, the true thing, the thing that Clark has been running from his entire adult life, he just accepts it because some part of him already knew what was going to happen. He's always known. He's just been paying an enormous amount of psychological energy to not know it. And when Mary finally says it out loud, some switch in Clark's brain flips and the denial is just gone. The energy that held it up disappears and Clark goes quiet in a way that isn't sadness exactly. It's kind of a relief. And after he accepts all this, he starts trying to fix things. He starts trying to untie Mary, and then boom, Captain Clark eats him. Captain Clark doesn't just attack Clark because Clark wants to leave. He attacks him because Clark has stopped being him. The moment Clark achieves self-awareness, the moment he stops feeding the lie, Captain Clark has no purpose for him anymore. He's built from denial. He can only exist if the denial exists, and Clark just let it go. So Captain Clark does the only thing he can do. He eliminates the version of Clark that no longer serves the story he was built from. The monster in this movie is Clark's ego. The final boss is self-deception. And the thing that triggers the final attack is a moment of genuine human growth. And I think that idea for a film is beautiful. Now that it's just a theory, a game theory. Sorry, no, that was a bad joke. Anyway, yes, it's all theory, not confirmed, but I think it's a good theory. It's the theory I'm gonna go with because it sounds very psychological and I like it. All right, now quickly, let's talk about the ending because a lot of people hated the ending. And I think that if you think about it in the right way, it can be pretty good, all right? Following the logic of everything we've established so far, a still life appearing means the facility is still running, still building. If Mary's still life exists, it's because someone inside the Backrooms is perceiving her and the facility is reconstructing her through that perception, right? And at the end of the film, there's this still life of Mary sitting in a room, and this version of Mary is not the Mary we've been following. She's like subdued and passive and a little lost and, you know, kind of weird. All right. And so the interviewer in that final scene is still inside, and the way he sees Mary, timid, diminished, controlled by her circumstances, that's how that version of her gets built. And it mirrors what we know about Mary's backstory. Her childhood was passive, controlled. She learned to make herself small, and this still life is built from the memory of someone who sees her exactly that way. It's not evidence that she escaped. It's evidence the machine is still running, still building from memory, still finding the wounds. The still lives in this film are like mirrors that show you how people see people, not who they actually are. And that is an idea so simple but so cool that I think makes a lot of sense to explain everything happening in the film. All right, this film is about what happens when you refuse to look at yourself honestly. It's about the version of yourself you build out of protection, the story you tell that makes everything your fault but everyone else's own problem. And it's about how that story can become so real to you that it takes on a life of its own, and it's about what it costs to finally let it go. And the facility in this film just makes that mental process visible. It takes the internal and makes it external. The monsters you're running from in the Backrooms are not creatures from another dimension. They are the people you've wronged. They're the people you've wronged, rebuilt from your incomplete and self-serving memories of them. The architecture that traps you is built from the places your mind returns to when you're trying not to feel something. The most powerful enemy in the space is the idealized self you've constructed to protect yourself from accountability. And that's not a horror film. That's a horror film and also a therapy session and also an invitation to look in the mirror without flinching. Boom, it does a lot. And I think when you really look at the film this way, it becomes really good. If you stop thinking about it as a typical horror film and you think about it as like a psychological, I was gonna say psychological thriller, but it's not a psychological thriller, it's a psychological horror. But you know, the whole thing is built on psychology of oneself and other people and how you think about things in life and all that good jazz. And there's a little bit of sci-fi in there too. I think it's really good. All right, if you hated the film, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. You're not wrong. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I hope that if you did hate the film, my video could give you some sort of enlightened understanding of said film, and that maybe you like it now. And yeah, that's the video. Again, shout out to Reddit user plenty_beautiful_742. Without them posting that extremely long Reddit post, I couldn't have fully articulated my thoughts on the film, because I always felt like it had something to do with memory, but they really enlightened me and helped me make this video essay, so shout out them. Yeah, if you're still here watching the video, please drop a like and subscribe. Join the Beam team. I'm trying to start a little community here. Don't forget to leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the film, your theories, what you think the film was actually about. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I don't know. Let me know. Follow me on Letterboxd and like my film reviews, because I think they're pretty cool. And yeah, I love you. Have a great day. Peace out.